I remember clearly hearing this voice, which felt like it was standing right next to me, say to me, "It's okay to leave. It's your time to do something else." From that point on, I was riveted. I wanted to understand what this voice was all about. And who was that voice? That was the voice of one of my primary spirit guides, Gideon. Welcome to the Soul to Earth podcast. I am so excited about this series that we're doing, which is on your spiritual awakening, tools, education, and also guidance to help you through that journey. Today, we are talking about the very important prospect of your spirit guides and how they can help you through your awakening. So, welcome. I am so excited to talk about this topic. I have a deep passion for working with my spirit guides, for helping my students meet their spirit guides, and also to be able to promote the incredible relationships that can really blossom and occur when we begin to work with these incredible spirits. And just spirits in general is a huge, fascinating topic for me. So we will be talking more about this at length in different segments. So look forward to that in other episodes as well. But today we're going to talk about the importance of how your spirit guides can help you during your spiritual awakening in the very beginning. So let's do a little bit of Spirit Guides 101, shall we? So I want to refer, first of all, to this experience that many spiritual teachers talk about with spirit guides. Now, there are probably some differing opinions about how many guides we have and about how these guides work with us, how long they are in our lives, things of that nature, and the importance of them. And so I really value other people's opinions and their experiences. So I'm going to speak from my own experience. And then I would say for you, just validate your own journey, do what is important to you, what works for you in your belief system. For me, spirit guides really have nothing to do with religion. I want to preface that. And I also want to say that many people I know who are very spiritual don't put much of an emphasis on working with their guides. So let's get started with this incredible topic. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited. So recently in my school, I did a class for all of my students. And this is like, I want to say 30 students. And this was an updated bit of information about connecting with your spirit guides. Now, I've always taught my students how to work with their guides since the very beginning. I have always worked with my guides. For over 38 years, I've worked with my spirit guides consciously. And for me, for a very long time, I recognized two guides. And so that would be my primary spirit guide and then my healing guide. So when I went to school in California, my teacher taught us that we had one primary guide and then we also had a healing guide if we were deciding to do energy and healing work. And so for many, many years, I was very much in touch with my guides, especially my one guide, which we'll talk about him in a moment. And then my healing guide was a guide that I used specifically when I did energy work on clients. And the relationship with my primary guide has always been very close. I have always been one of those intuitives that I talk out loud to my guide constantly. And if I'm creating something, if I am working on something, if I'm processing something, if I am contemplating something, I am having an out loud conversation often with my guide, or else in my telepathing with my guide. It's almost as though he's just a part of my awareness. So I met him, my primary guide, when I was in school many, many years ago. My primary guide's name is Gideon. I met my healing guide a few years later when I learned those techniques. For many years, I did not know their name. I just could feel their energy. I had a sense of presence and it was more elusive and there wasn't any specifics. Whereas Gideon, I knew right away, like his energy, his gender, his personality, where he was from, how he dressed, his how he showed up for me. And so it was very specific. And when I connected with him, I got a lot of visual images. I could hear him. I could sense his energy. It was very detailed. And with their energy, it was, like I said, much more like a mystical thing, just like an energetic presence. So it was very different. Now, I have marched on through time all these years, understanding I had two guides. That was it, and I knew I had loved ones in spirit. I knew there were angels, things of that nature. But I will say everything changed for me in 2019 when it came to guides. Now, this is a bigger, larger story, which I have talked about a little bit of this on earlier podcast episodes, and I'll definitely go into this now. But I'm going to move you through part of that into what now my understanding is. So, I started to feel like when I was working with my students over even the last year, that there were more primary guides that worked with us. And one of my dear friends, Lorenda Carr, who's also a medium, much of her training was with the Spiritualist Church. And the Spiritualist Church, which is, of course, well known, especially for developing your mediumship abilities, they have a belief that you have four primary guides, and then you have one guide that comes in like a master teacher, and that guide can kind of rotate depending on who you're working with. So I'm going to walk through the different guides that, according to this Spiritualist Church, which I am now teaching my students because it's been revealed to me that this resonates, right? So I'm going to kind of walk through, first of all, what spirit guides are, how we incarnate together, how we work together, the different relationships that we have when it comes to our guides and with them, and how we each help each other, things of that nature. So let's get started. So the first guide that we have that we'll speak of is known as your joy guide. And your joy guide, the way it was explained to me and the way I have had experienced it, is that joy guide is the one that picks you up when you're feeling low. It's the one that encourages you. It's the one that supports you and gives you sort of a different perspective, right? So backtrack just a little bit. Your guides, I should say, before we go to joy guide, you all incarnate. Before you incarnate, you have this meeting right on the other side, when you're in the spirit world and you are devising like what body you're going to take, who is your family, what are your life lessons going to be, primary lessons, what are you going to be working on, what are you going to be accessing, things of that nature. You come together because your guides are part of your soul family. They're part of that soul tribe, your soul consciousness, right? The soul oversoul, right? They're part of the oversoul. So they're a part of you, but they're a fractal. They're not exactly you, I don't believe. That's my estimation, at least not in their consciousness completely. So you make this plan or this strategy for how things are going to go, right? And you're doing this together. So when you're incarnating, your guides are a support system, but they're in no way there to tell you what to do, just like you're not there to tell them what to do. You collaborate. You're working on a project together. So you're co-creating. So your joy guide is the one that acts like your cheerleader, sort of your encourager. I call the joy guide like my daily guide, the one who's sort of always at my side, when I'm dealing with all these things that I deal with in a day or the challenges I go through, right? And my joy guy's name is Gideon. Now, Gideon, and this is another interesting point, which I'll talk about later, is his origins are Scottish. Now, that's always been the way. He has a Scottish like accent. He's from like the Highlands, right? Now, is it interesting that my half of my genealogy is Scottish. My maiden name is Scottish, right? My whole lineage on my father's side, Scottish, right? There's a real link for me in my sort of heritage with that culture. And so my main guide is Scottish. That's always been the way it is. And I feel as though Gideon and I have really grown up together. And especially because he and I have had so many, I mean, I'm 60, almost 61 now. And I've known him since I was in my 20s consciously. So I've been talking to him for such a long time. I just feel like he's family. So my next guide, right, is a guide that I literally met when I started doing mediumship, right? And so this guide is known as your doctor teacher guide, right? So they act as instructor, mentor. They act as teacher, they act as educator, I believe. And they can also teach you things that you're learning about. So whatever you're diving into, they're diving into, right? So for me, my sort of teacher guide, or I should say, doctor teacher guide, really helps me with like the skills I work on that have to do with healing, anything esoteric, the occult, mediumship, psychic abilities, things of that nature. Now, my guide's name is Fielding. And when I heard that name, I was just like, Fielding, what does that mean? And he said to me, because I field information, I gather information, I depict things, I explain things, I lay things out. Now, I work a lot with him when I work in the Akashic Records or when I work on mediumship, right? He's one of my primary guides for mediumship, very specifically. And so he helps me tremendously when it comes to details about how to increase and improve my mediumship. And he's definitely part of my team. And he helps lay structure and he helps make things make sense. And he helps me to grow and develop. And almost like on a spirit level and on an astral level and in the ethers, he helps me with the energy of things. He just kind of delineates things and makes sense of things. Amazing. So next we have what is known in the United States as your alchemist guide. I think in Britain it's known as a chemist guide, which is their word for that. Now, I want to say something. I thought for sure my alchemist guide would be this female sort of elusive healing guide that I had for years. I thought for sure when I met him that would be who the guide was. Well, guess what? That's not my guide. That guide that I work with healing only comes in certain times and not even all the time for that specific work. The alchemist guide that I work with, his name is Langley. It's all these English names, which I think is very interesting, English and Scottish names. And he actually, believe it or not, is to me as more of a star being. We don't have a lot of communication. He definitely comes to me and helps me in these other ways, which are much more energetic. He helps me with healing on a higher level with my clients. He talks to me more about complex energy patterns, right? So as you're getting started on your spiritual journey and you're going through your awakening, obviously, as I'm speaking about them, this has been time I've spent that I've learned about them over and over again. But my suggestion is to begin to learn to connect with your guides. Now, this is a step-by-step process, and this is something that I teach, and I definitely recommend checking out my courses on learning to meet your spirit guides, because once you start working with your guides and you create that bond and that relationship, it really helps you on your spiritual path. It can help you with grounding. It can help you with your confidence. It can help you with your intuition. It can help you with healing, gain insights for protection, clarity, so many things, because they're part of the framework of your experience and your awareness. The last guide we're going to talk about before we talk about guest master teacher guides is your protector guide. Now, you can imagine, like the name says, a protection guide is there to help you, I believe, first of all, keep you out of harm's way, but also to sort of like run interference. So one of the ways I look at my protection guide is that, let's say I want to go downtown and go out for the night, to go to a restaurant. I feel like the protector guide will be the one to sort of say, maybe not a good idea tonight, or did you put oil in your car? Things like that. So they act like they run interference. They act like that, your dad or your older brother who's going to keep you safe, right, from harm. So that's a really primary, function of your protector guide. Now we have our master guide, right? Master guides, they are really, like, I like to say this, they're like guest mentors, as I say, like, so now this is where we can get into talking about deity work or archangels or maybe ascended masters, but not always. Sometimes they can be, goddesses or different spiritual beings that you're working with. They can sometimes be elemental beings, things like that. So, and those guides sometimes show up for a season. Sometimes they stay a very long time. And they are there to enrich, to educate, protect you, and help you evolve on your spiritual path. So we continue to grow, we continue to evolve. And as we go on our spiritual path through our awakening, and then further down the road, deepening our relationship with our guides, asking them to come in close to us, to connect with us, learning to trust the feelings, the messages, and the insights that we gain from having them in our lives is incredibly enriching. Now, what are some really easy tips for you to learn to meet your spirit guides? As I mentioned, I do teach a mini course on this. And the main thing is, I would say, is I would get into a quiet state, right? Turn off your phone for at least a half an hour. Turn on some really quiet, calming music that doesn't have any lyrics. And then have your journal nearby, right? And spend some time doing some of that grounded breath work, getting yourself nice and centered. And then the first thing you can do is ask one of your guides to come in very close to you. When you feel them coming close to you, I just want you to notice, are you getting any sensations? Do you hear anything? Do you see anything? Do you sense anything? Do you see any images? What do you notice? You can do this exercise either with your eyes open or with your eyes closed. But doing it with your eyes closed at first can be very helpful because you're able to possibly see images or flashes of light or anything that might be connected to them. So spend time at first doing that exercise. And then as you get more comfortable, you can go along and ask them for more information. So when you're connecting with your spirit guides, understand that as you're developing that muscle of talking with spirits, you want to understand, you want to be very open-minded. You want to release expectations. You want to validate anything that you're receiving. And you want to just not compare yourself to anyone else that's doing this type of development work. Now, as you go through time, you can also ask them, what they like to be called, right? Do they have a name? I like to ask them what they like to be called because I feel like sometimes when we say, "What's your name?" there's a pressure, not from them to us, but from us going outwards. And it sometimes definitely shuts down our channel when it comes to receiving information. And with any type of intuitive development or spirit work, we always want to feel really comfortable and open and at ease. And we want to feel our energy is very relaxed and able to receive the information. If being receptive is very important when it comes to intuitive development and any type of spiritual work, and talking to guides is one of those things that I would mention to you, is to just release expectations. Let yourself be impressed upon with the information you're receiving. So this is our second episode when it comes to different things that can help us with our spiritual awakening. As always, I want to thank you so much for being an active listener. Make sure that you're following me on this podcast here on YouTube, also on my website. Feel free to check out my offers. You can also follow me on my socials on Instagram and also on TikTok. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.